Yeah, we're excited that book 2 is all about the spirits, and we're, not 100%, but we're pretty confident that the audience is going to be into it.
Like, people really didn't like it. And I remember being interviewed in New York, and they were like, people hate Korra, so why did you do it?
Like, my favorite character is Lin Bei Fong.
Yes.
Can I expect like a comic? Can she get her own comic, please? Or, is she going to be a part of, will she be a part of Spirits? Because they're moving to the...
You know what? I mean, we knew that people are not going to be happy. She's not in book 2 that much.
And then book 2, we thought, oh, okay, now we can catch our stride, but we had just even more production problems.
Book 2 was like trauma.
Yeah.
I felt traumatized.
Triage, trauma. I think it took about 1.5 years off my life.
Yeah, and whenever, we do a new project, we always want to do better than the last one, so, which we did with Korra, and now it's like, we can't really do better than Korra.
You didn't do it, Mike. Korra is horrible. Aang is the best. And we're getting some of the best animation back we've ever gotten. There's no huge conspiracy. I think everybody thought it was like the evil corporation or the network shelving the episodes.
Pulling it off the channel and moving it to digital exclusively. It's part of this huge sea change really in the whole industry. I mean, you guys, I'm sure you've seen articles about cable cutters and, we're seeing digital streaming.
Part 1. What the fuck is going on? At the end of Book 1, Amon was revealed to be a psychic bloodbender, in what is honestly one of the most baffling plot twists I've ever seen. Korra achieved the Avatar state, somehow learned airbending and started dating Mako. None of these things actually affect Book 2 in any meaningful way. So now we're here, and it turns out that the Equalist movement just vanished into thin air. Like all other real-life political ideologies in which the founding leaders die. But it's not only the Equalists that seem to have disappeared, but any semblance of continuity between these seasons. In fact, I can't name a single piece of character development of any of these people that's been passed into this season. Sure, Korra has the Avatar state, and also the ability to talk to her past lives, apparently, even though she never uses this ability and then fucking permanently loses it by the end of the season. And her Avatar state is just something that was gifted to her, regardless of any personality change. As for the other characters, well, here's a quick recap of them for those of you who, and I don't blame you for this, are completely blanking on their personalities. Bolin. Hey, remember how funny Sokka was in Avatar, but how in the later series he matured into this absolute badass leader and strategist? Charge! Well, Bolin is Sokka minus the charm, wit, or humor, or good writing, and unlike Sokka, he's genuinely useless for most of the series.
Thank you.
See, the thing is, it's kind of cool to have your comic relief character also be the central strategist and thinker of the group. It's a nice duality that Avatar balances perfectly.
Listen up, everyone! I want the tanks in wedge formation! Warriors and benders in the middle! We're taking that tower and heading for the Royal Palace!
Bolin is probably the least egregious of the main cast of Korra in the sense that he's not unbearable to watch.
I'm gonna go see how Korra's doing.
Bolin, I got a little something for you round back.
Wow!
Most of the time, but like the rest, he's bland as fuck.
Whoa! So you were supposed to be chief, then he became chief. No wonder you guys don't like each other. Ow, what? Isn't that what happened?
Mako, Bolin's edgy older brother. Remember how cool and suave Zuko was? Well, that's Mako minus anything that made Zuko interesting, or anything that makes someone human. He's the tortured, cold, and mysterious love interest for Korra. and Asami, despite being about as complex as a plank of wood and with the same range of emotions. As a result of the rampantly autistic Zutaro movement, the romantic pairing of Zuko and Katara in the original Avatar series, it seems that the creators, Breik, attempted to replicate this with Mako and Korra respectively. The difference here is that these characters have exactly zero chemistry, especially considering how poorly developed they are.
Yeah, I had a few others. Let's see. Looks like you guys should put more tri in triad. Huh? Or, when you get to jail, tell them Mako sent you.
Ooh, I like that one.
I honestly have no idea why these characters are together. Despite the love triangle taking up so much of the first season and a large portion of the second, there's not really any depth to their relationship. Like, we never just see them hanging out and talking about things, you know, like another series might have had the characters doing.
I'm tapped out. I already picked my toes. Twice. Twice? The first time's for cleaning, but the second time's just for the sweet picking sensation.
On top of being boring, Mako's motivations and actions are consistently inexplicable. He flips around in that awfully written love triangle, or rectangle, I guess, considering there are 4 people involved, and acting like a massive cunt for the majority of the first season.
If you don't drop this, consider our friendship over.
I'm sorry. Hiroshi is not the man you think he is.
But then randomly flipping over to being the stoic and mysterious bad boy character.
I'll ask you one more time. Where is she?
His only life purpose seems to be to protect Bolin, as their parents were murdered by a firebender when they were young, which we never see, and there never appears to be any complexity to besides, oh no, they're orphans. Have sympathy somehow.
This scarf was my father's, and it's all I have left of him. I just feel like it keeps me safe.
I'm so sorry. I lost my mother when I was very young.
This is meant to explain Mako's character, but it's never explored in any meaningful way. In fact, we literally see nothing of their past besides what they tell us, which is already very, very little.
They were mugged by a firebender. He cut them down right in front of me.
I'm Batman.
What? We couldn't have had something like this? I'm not looking for some character study on these people or whatever, but these 2 shots of Sokka legitimately have more meaning and depth to them than Mako and Bolin's entire characters across these 2 seasons. Another confusing thing is that after becoming orphans, Mako and Bolin join a gang and are criminals for some time, I suppose.
You don't know what you're talking about. I just ran numbers for them and stuff. We were orphans out on the street. I did what I had to do to survive and protect my little brother.
I mean, that's kind of cool, I guess. But again, we see nothing of this and it's barely referenced at all. I guess it explains Mako being cold and edgy, but I don't really understand how Bolin's autistic brain damaged personality emerged from this.
Ooh, Korra. There they go. Here we are, all alone in the gym. Just you and me. 2 alone people. Together. Alone.
The problem here is that people can extrapolate their headcanons and say, oh, well, it's obvious that Bolin takes on a comedic tone to hide the pain or some shit like that. But that's fucking shit writing. It's not like the character's motivations should be spelled out for you or something. But if the show is going to establish a sympathy-baiting past for these characters, then it should at least have the decency to explore it. What's confusing is that a lot of Korra seems to take place in the wrong time period. The past of Korra seems to be a lot more interesting than the present, because we just seem to be getting the sloppy seconds of these characters. Mako and Bolin struggling to live and turning to crime is a cool struggle, as is their eventual rise to fame through pro-bending. Korra teeters on the edge of depth without actually plunging in. And it's a real shame because with only 2 shots, these could have been interesting characters. In essence, Mako is a low-resolution photocopy of Zuko for people self-inserting as Korra to fantasize about. Also, he's named after the voice actor for Iroh, who died during the production of Avatar Book 2, which makes how shitty he is even more insulting. You know, the great thing about bland characters with no true distinguishing features or complexity is that you can imprint anything you want onto them. Isn't that just perfect? And speaking of which, Asami. There's almost no point in referencing this quote-unquote character who legitimately has less depth than Appa, a fucking flying bison. There's more development for Appa in 1 episode of Avatar than Asami's character in the entire series. And he has no lines of dialogue, and I feel I have to stress this, is a fucking flying bison.
Choose well. A sky bison is a companion for life.
I guess this means we'll always be together.
Always.
Plus, Asami has the same, or perhaps even less usefulness than Appa, considering they both fill the role of transport. Literally, that's her purpose in this series, to fly or drive the main cast around. I mean, at least Appa helped out in fights. But at the same time, Asami is positioned as a main character, despite having a microscopic amount of screen time and being introduced like halfway through book 1. Apparently, she was initially written as a villain, which makes a little bit more sense, but her personality extends about as far as Mako's, which is to say, none. She runs a large-scale weapons factory, which sounds a lot more interesting than it actually is. Her mother also died from a firebender, but like Mako and Bolin, this is never seen or explored in any meaningful fashion, and again we're left with a cardboard cutout of a person. Basically, nothing, the character. And finally, the eponymous Korra. Man, oh man, what a character.
You can't do this! You take their lives and I'll take yours.
I can almost see what they were going for here. The strong, diverse woman of color in a leading role. All of the good buzzwords that make you want to tear off your dick and jump out of a fucking window. Now I want to make a distinction right up front. I don't dislike females in lead roles. In fact, I think it's an interesting twist if done right. Of course, Avatar is a perfect example of this, as usual. Katara, who fills the same strong woman of color leading role, is actually a good character, as are the rest of the female cast, with Toph, Suki, and Azula being the most notable choices. Now, these characters aren't good because they're physically strong, though that is an aspect of it. It's because they're well-written, interesting, and flawed people. Katara isn't portrayed as the perfect Mary Sue. She can be bitchy and controlling, as members of the gang point out on numerous occasions.
Both? I'm completely calm! I can see that.
Now, just to make this clear, a good character does not have to equate to one who is morally good. In fact, many of these characters are interesting for their transgression into morally questionable acts. Katara isn't portrayed in a positive light, for example, while bloodbending this guy in the Southern Raiders episode, or when she says this.
Katara, she was my mother too. But I think Aang might be right.
Then you didn't love her the way I did.
Katara!
Yet again, a distinction must be made between characters making bad decisions and characters making stupid decisions for the sake of moving the plot along, the latter of which Korra is notorious for. Katara's very questionable attitude in the Southern Raiders is extremely revelatory about her character.
You should get some rest. We'll be there in a few hours. You'll need all your strength.
Oh, don't you worry about my strength. I have plenty. I'm not the helpless little girl I was when they came.
It shows us the moral limits that she's willing to go to and gives us some vital information about her reaction to one of the primary elements of her character, the death of her mother.
I wanted to do it. I wanted to take out all my anger at him, but I couldn't. I don't know if it's because I'm too weak to do it, or if it's because I'm strong enough not to.
Through this, her character experiences growth, and we learn more about her as a person. Same thing with Aang choosing to save Katara instead of attaining the Avatar state.
If you leave now, you won't be able to go into the Avatar state at all.
Or Zuko choosing to side with Azula at the end of the Crossroads of Destiny. These are quote-unquote wrong decisions that these characters make, but they need to have them to learn and grow. That's what flaws are, and that is what constitutes a strong character, male or female.
She was protecting the last waterbender.
What? Who?
Me!
Not their ability to replicate the strength of a man or to beat the shit out of people. Now, this applies directly to Korra because she's the absolute antithesis of good character writing.
This mission is too dangerous. We're leaving.
No, Dad. You're leaving.
Bryke's handling of her is so extraordinarily bad that it's almost transcendent, nearly to the point of being a parody of itself.
You cannot silence me, Avatar!
Shut your yapper and listen up.
I was initially going to refer to Korra as a violent psychopath in a joking manner, but after checking the hair psychopathy checklist and reading the whole of Hervey M. Cleckley's The Mask of Sanity, I'm not so sure if it's an incorrect diagnosis. Out of the 20 possible traits for a psychopath, I spot 12 that apply to Korra. Grandiose estimation of self.
I'm the Avatar! You gotta deal with it!
Need for stimulation.
I think I'm doing it wrong.
Lack of remorse or guilt. Shallow affect, which basically means a low complexity in emotion.
How could you take his side?
What's with you and sides? Why do you always think I'm working against you?
Well, you're not helping me. I'm trying to get troops to the south. What are you doing?
This meeting is over.
My family is going to be wiped out, and it'll be on your head for doing nothing about it.
Callousness and lack of empathy.
Where's Jinora? Why isn't she waking up? Korra! What happened to my little girl?
Poor behavioral controls.
You can't do this! You take their lives and I'll take yours. You ratted me out to the president?
Korra, let me explain.
Unless you want to be Naga's afternoon snack, you better keep talking. What do you mean he got my father banished?
Nothing.
Keep talking. You betrayed me and my family!
Sexual promiscuity.
I don't know, things are complicated. I've been feeling really confused and
Impulsivity.
That was a 2,000-year-old historical treasure. What is wrong with you?
Amon remains at large. Why have you failed to locate him? You want to know why?
Because Amon is hiding in the shadows like a coward. Amon, I challenge you to a duel.
Failure to accept responsibility for own actions.
Korra, this isn't something you can force. If you would only listen to me.
I have been! But you know what I think? Maybe the problem isn't me. Maybe the reason I haven't learned airbending yet is because you're a terrible teacher!
Well, excuse me, officer. Don't let me stand in the way of you writing tickets. I'm just trying to save the world.
Well, you wouldn't have to if you didn't keep messing it up.
I can't talk to you when you're like this.
You're the one who's like this.
And many short-term marital relationships. A few of these are taken out of context, sure, but for the most part, they ring true. Korra is one of the most unlikable characters I think I've ever had the displeasure of seeing, but that's not the most impressive part. Not only is she the main character, but she's almost always depicted in a positive light.
So, what exactly were you and my dad talking about?
Nothing. He was just worried about you, that's all.
You know, sometimes I wonder whose side you're on.
There aren't any sides. We all just want to help however we can. You have to trust that we're here for you.
By the way, I'm really sorry for being a total pain. Things were really stressful and confusing. It's hard being the Avatar.
It's harder being the Avatar's boyfriend.
You ratted me out to the president?
I made this comparison before, but Korra's character is like Book 1 Zuko if he was the main character, never changed as a person, didn't feel remorse, and was never mocked for his awful personality.
Just give me 10 minutes to check the merchants at this port of call. Hopefully, they'll have the Lotus tile in stock and I can get on with my life. I'm lucky to have such an understanding nephew.
If Korra were positioned as the terrible person she is, and both she and the other characters of the show recognized it, this would be fine and probably something interesting to explore for your protagonist. Instead, Korra's awful personality is never really criticized, and nothing bad seems to come as a result of it, at least for the first 2 seasons. You never get a moment like this from Korra.
Uncle, I know you must have mixed feelings about seeing me. But I want you to know, I am so sorry, Uncle. I am so sorry and ashamed of what I did. I don't know how I can ever make it up to you, but How can you forgive me so easily? I thought you would be furious with me.
I was never angry with you. I was sad because I was afraid you lost your way.
And if you do, it doesn't really change anything for her. She'll have some grand revelation.
I was so terrified. I felt so helpless. You were right. I've been scared this whole time. I've never felt like this before, and I don't know what to do.
And then revert back to exactly how she was by the next episode, something that's actually very typical with psychopaths.
You do have feelings for me.
What? Jealous? Don't be ridiculous.
Admit it. You like me.
No, I'm with Asami.
Yeah, but when you're with her, you're thinking about me, aren't you?
Anyway, Korra is, on a physical level, a strong character in that she has muscles and beats people up. But her character has the depth of, well, a psychopath.
Nothing.
Keep talking.
But that's almost a superficial problem to the real issue. The real issue is that her needs and desires are poorly established. By this, I mean John Truby's definition of this in his book, The Anatomy of Story. Need has to do with overcoming a weakness within the character. A hero with a need is always paralyzed in some way at the beginning of the story by his weakness. Desire is a goal outside the character. Once the hero comes up with his desire, he is moving in a particular direction and taking actions to reach his goal. Think of need as the internal element that must change in the character to achieve their goal, and desire as being a physical, tangible manifestation of their goal. For Aang, his desire is to defeat the Fire Lord and achieve the Avatar state, among other things, but his need is to pursue this path without compromising his values.
This isn't a joke, Sokka!
None of you understands the position I'm in.
Aang, we do understand. It's just...
Just what, Katara? What?
We're trying to help.
Then when you figure out a way for me to beat the Fire Lord without taking his life, I'd love to hear it.
It gives him a conflict throughout the series in which he must change being the key word here, to achieve this goal. He's a pacifist in a violent world in which his destiny is to murder someone propagating a war that he is partially responsible for.
Yes, all life is sacred.
I know, I'm even a vegetarian. I've always tried to solve my problems by being quick or clever, and I've only had to use violence for necessary defense. And I've certainly never used it to take a life.
Avatar Aang, I know that you're a gentle spirit, and the monks have taught you well. But this isn't about you. This is about the world.
But the monks taught me that I had to detach myself from the world so my spirit could be free.
Many great and wise air nomads have detached themselves and achieved spiritual enlightenment. But the Avatar can never do it. Because your sole duty is to the world. Here is my wisdom for you. Selfless duty calls you to sacrifice your own spiritual needs and do whatever it takes to protect the world.
It's an interesting conflict, and one that I don't think is actually handled particularly well in the ending of the series, when there's no real moral struggle for Aang gaining the Avatar state or the ability to remove Ozai's bending. Zuko is actually a far better example of this duality. Zuko's desire, at least in the first season, is to capture Aang, but Zuko's needs are far more complex as we learn as the series progresses.
The Avatar gives Zuko hope.
He has a complex and abusive relationship, not only with his father, but his sister as well.
And I want my knife back, now.
Who's going to make me? Mom?
He has a strong need to restore his honor with his family and nation, which unhealthily manifests in outbursts of anger and moodiness.
Prince Zuko, consider the safety of the crew.
The safety of the crew doesn't matter. Finding the Avatar is far more important than any individual's safety.
But this isn't the interesting part of his character. What's interesting is that Zuko is consistently challenged on his fundamental values and forced to change, that word coming up again, or justify his reasons for remaining the same.
But it's nothing to be ashamed of. There is a simple honor in poverty.
There's no honor for me without the Avatar.
Zuko, even if you did capture the Avatar, I'm not so sure it would solve our problems. Not now.
Why can't I do it? Instead of lightning, it keeps exploding in my face. Like everything always does.
I was afraid this might happen. You will not be able to master lightning until you have dealt with the turmoil inside you.
What turmoil?
Zuko, you must let go of your feelings of shame if you want your anger to go away.
But I don't feel any shame at all. I'm as proud as ever.
Prince Zuko, pride is not the opposite of shame, but its source. True humility is the only antidote to shame.
In fact, The Storm and Zuko alone, two of the best episodes in the entire series, are almost completely focused on unraveling the complexities of his past and how that reflects on the present.
You can't sacrifice an entire division like that. Those soldiers love and defend our nation. How can you betray them?
This is also the reason that, despite being an unlikable character in early season 1, with his desire directly antagonizing the protagonist, we still root for Zuko against his fight with Zhao. The point here is that a character can be irritating.
Why don't you enjoy a cup of calming jasmine tea?
I don't need any calming tea! I need to capture the Avatar!
Morally repulsive.
The Avatar is alive. I want you to find him and
and end him.
Violent and rude,
Shut your mouth, you water tribe peasant!
but still be an interesting and enjoyable character to see unfold. And the thing that makes that possible is a strong need and desire. You know, there's a quote from Aaron Ahaz that goes like this: "Don't make your characters likable, make them complex." I would say Korra goes for this, but it really doesn't. They don't even attempt to make Korra likable, but that isn't really the problem. The problem is that her fundamental need is not clearly established. Her desire in the first season is to learn airbending and to talk to her past lives, which is perfectly fine, but without a need, it's difficult for us to care about her achieving these things. And more importantly, it's difficult for us to stick through with her flaws, which are legitimately frustrating for the audience.
What is wrong with you?
And frustration isn't necessarily bad. In fact, it probably means that you care about the actions of the character to some degree. It just has to be fruitful frustration. Zuko makes many bad decisions throughout Avatar, most of which challenge us as an audience. We root for him to act a certain way, for example, siding with Iroh and being a good person, and he constantly undermines that. But, and this is perhaps the most important part of this entire rant, we want to stick through with him in this struggle. The difference with Korra, at least for me, is that with her need being so poorly defined, and a lot of her actions in the series not really being tied to her desire, like pro-bending and the love triangle, it's very difficult to tolerate her as a character.
I know this is difficult to accept, but it's not the right time for you to come to the city.
Whatever.
Struggle is another thing to think about. Zuko actually has a moral compass, and this is constantly challenged. Here, he wants food to survive, but won't steal from a couple with a newborn baby.
A newborn baby.
But the most important thing about this is that these moments, A, show that Zuko has certain moral limits that cannot be surpassed by his desires.
The Avatar.
Excellent form, Prince Zuko.
You taught me well.
And B, that these cause an internal struggle within him.
What's happening?
Your critical decision. What you did beneath that lake. It was in such conflict with your image of yourself that you are now at war within your own mind and body.
What's that mean?
You are going through a metamorphosis, my nephew. It will not be a pleasant experience. But when you come out of it, you will be the beautiful prince you are always meant to be.
This is super important to have, because the entire purpose of story 99.9% of the time is to challenge your characters and show them being challenged.
What do you plan to do now that you have found the Avatar's bison? Keep it locked in our new apartment? Should I go put on a pot of tea for him?
First I have to get it out of here.
And then what? You never think these things through. This is exactly what happened when you captured the Avatar at the North Pole. You had him, and then you had nowhere to go.
The problem with Korra is that she does something morally reprehensible, like threatening a judge with violence because he made a decision she didn't like.
I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do. I was just following Unalaq's orders.
What are you talking about?
I've said too much.
Unless you want to be Naga's afternoon snack, you better keep talking.
Your fucking moral compass is a roulette wheel!
But there's no sense of her struggling to actually make this decision, and furthermore, we don't really understand how she ended up this way. When Zuko steals this woman's ostrich horse after she's hospitable to him and Iroh...
What are you doing? These people just showed you great kindness.
They're about to show us a little more kindness.
And opens up about her suffering at the hands of the Fire Nation.
The Fire Nation has hurt you. It's okay. They've hurt me too.
We at least understand how Zuko's moral compass ended up this way. He's an arrogant, brash, and self-centered prince and son of quasi-Hitler who bottles his emotions to the point of explosion.
We have no idea where he is.
What?
His father burned and banished him over basically nothing, and he's currently on the run from his psychopathic sister. And this is something we spend a lot of time in the series dwelling on.
Azula always lies. Azula always lies.
Azula always lies.
With Korra, her past is so poorly explored that it's impossible to empathize with her in the present.
Yeah, and certainly with Korra, like, yeah, we didn't want her to be perfect or have everything figured out. I mean, that was the thing. She was awesome at this one skill or this set of skills, but still had a lot of growing up to do and a lot of she's basically a girl who was like secluded away for most of her life in the South Pole, didn't really have any friends or close friends, and was set off into the world to like not only like save the world, but then like have these relationships,
discover the world.
with people her age and stuff. So yeah, you're bound to make some stupid decisions and not say the right thing all the time. And
I actually really, really, really like this conflict, and I wish it was explored. Maybe if we had, I don't know, a flashback episode detailing Korra's past visually, we would perhaps understand and empathize, not sympathize, with her actions in the present.
It was at a point early in season 2 where Korra was kind of going off the rails, and I remember Mike and the writers really wanted, like, this civil war, she's gonna take it very personally, and she's gonna it's gonna cloud her judgment, and she's gonna not making good decisions, and like, people really didn't like it, and I remember being interviewed in New York, and they were like, people hate Korra, so why did you do it? Or something, like, people hate what you've done with Korra, or something. And I was like, wow. I'm like, Aang was like going on a rampage in the middle of the desert, like beating people up because someone took his bison, like we take a lot.
Shut up! Shut the fuck up! You fucking retard!
This is a really fascinating perspective that Brian takes because he doesn't seem to understand the distinction between these two things, which is kind of crazy because he fucking made both of them. The end of the desert is fucking beautiful and one of my favorite scenes of the original series. We see Aang in an intense rage at having lost Appa, similar to his reaction to the loss of Monk Gyatso, and we have this brilliant and touching moment with him and Katara. Aang has a really interesting arc in this part of the series, initially appearing angry and reclusive.
I'm awake. I couldn't sleep.
Before becoming resentful and explosive.
You stole Appa! Where is he? What did you do to him?
They're lying. They're the thieves.
Where is my bison?
This anger manifests to the point of Aang killing another living being. And eventually exploding in the manner that he does at the end of this episode.
You muzzled Appa?
This is another great example of a character's fundamental values being challenged by external events, and there being a struggle to adapt or retain them. Plus, in the next episode, The Serpent's Pass, Aang's character is developed further.
Katara, it's okay. I know I was upset about losing Appa before, but I just want to focus on getting to Ba Sing Se and telling the Earth King about the solar eclipse.
Oh, well, okay.
As an opposite to this ending, here Aang is cold and distant.
Come on, You need a hug.
Thank you for your concern, Katara.
Before seeing hope in the form of rebirth.
I've been going through a really hard time lately, but you've made me hopeful again.
It's a seriously beautiful arc, and one of my favorite parts of the show in terms of characterization, because it feels like a genuine way for a character to respond to a significant loss. The fact that Aang bounces between these states of great anger and then emotional distance tells us a lot about him as a person.
Wow, I'm like, Aang was like going on a rampage in the middle of the desert, like beating people up because someone took his bison, you know, like.
Unlike the way Brian describes this, Aang's actions are completely understandable and empathetic. We feel his connection and his pain, so we're far more forgiving, let's say, in his anger. With Korra, there's no clear sense of her values, what she will and will not do, or how these non-existent values relate to her past. The fact that he supposedly cannot comprehend the distinction between these two things is kind of stunning, and it really explains a lot about this season. Imagine if we actually got to see Korra's pain and isolation in the North Pole. You know, there's probably a lot of cool visuals with those huge white landscapes to imply emptiness and to juxtapose a child against them. You know, something like this. In the end, you don't need to see Season 1 to watch Season 2, and by that extension, you don't need to see Season 2 to watch Season 3, which is what I've actually started recommending that people do, because Book 3 is legitimately brilliant.
What a twist!
There are legitimately only a few things that you really need to know. Korra is the Avatar. She fucked this guy, but then this chick fucked this guy as well, and now none of them are fucking, except maybe these two. The spirit portals were opened. Oh yeah, by the way, spirit portals exist. They were opened at the end of Season 2, allowing spirits and humans to live peacefully, side by side, resulting in nothing. Oh, also the spirits of the past avatars are dead, and they can never come back.
Bye! Bye-bye!
Everything else in the season you can basically pick up in 2 seconds without prior knowledge. Man, I love watching shows where the actions of the characters have no consequence or repercussion.
But Bright didn't even know they were getting a second season when they made the first one, so they couldn't possibly have set up contingency for it.
I hear that they didn't know they were getting a second season argument a lot, and while it is literally true, it ignores the fundamental issue with spirits. Everything is shit, regardless of any continuity from Book 1. Book 1 was bad, but not in every regard. The animation and music were pretty good for the most part, and the voice acting was decent. It was closer to mediocre than straight up awful for the most part, which elevates it slightly above the 9th circle of hell, placing it here, the first Bolgia of the 8th circle. With Book 2, almost every single element is absolutely atrocious. And I'm not just talking about really obvious stuff like the infamous end of Evangelion style ending, the bafflingly slow start, awful villain, flat forgettable characters, useless subplots, non-existent character development, bewildering second half, inexcusably shit animation and CGI, horrendous dialogue.
They're after the president!
Why do you think the dark spirits are following us?
Can we not talk about dark spirits, please?
My brother doesn't like ghost stories.
I don't want to hear your lame-brained rookie ideas. You're a beat cop, not a detective. Now hit the street and do your job.
Lu and Gong are idiots. I hate them and their stupid mustaches.
Unalaq will be waiting for you. You'll need all of your avatar power to stop him.
What the flameo happened here?
I broke up with the Avatar.
You got off easy. You should have seen Air Temple Island after Tenzin broke up with me.
Autistic editing.
You didn't get her?
The Avatar is dead.
bland choreography, shoehorn relationship drama, ruining of Avatar's lore, processes system,
and so on and so on.
It's very hard to explain exactly why this season is so bad. Not only because almost everything is wrong, but because it's something not easily described. I mean, every single scene is wrong. There's no other way to put it. The jokes don't land.
Whoa! Who are the lovely ladies?
That's Eska and Desna, the chief's children. Desna is a guy.
Oh no, sure, I knew that. Oh, and which one is Desna?
That makes you gay, bitch!
The line delivery is awkward or straight up incorrect.
Lu and Gong are idiots. I hate them and their stupid mustaches.
Command respect. Ah.
Wow. I could just stay in here forever, reading.
See, The Last Airbender wasn't just a fantastic series because it had some cool elements or ideas. It was well constructed on nearly every level. Every element seemed to flow in harmony with each other, from the fantastic music by the track team to the great voice acting, cinematography, fight choreography, writing, characters, and set pieces. The show functioned as it was intended to and had a very clear sense of purpose and planning. You felt like you were in good hands when watching the show and that those steering the ship knew how to navigate it, unlike in Korra.
You'll be dodging those.
Of course, not everything in Avatar was perfect, but even dumb stuff like the lion turtle Deus Ex Machina is at least well made on a technical level. Sure, I'm not a big fan of the final fight with Aang and Ozai, as I've made very clear in the past, but it's well animated, choreographed, and the music is great. The point is that even when the series did dumb stuff, which was not very often, mind you.
Hey everybody, Avatar Kyoshi here.
This is ridiculous.
It could fall back on the fact that, as a whole, it was a very well-made show. Even shit episodes like The Great Divide or The Painted Lady are brilliant by most kids' TV standards. In the end, I'm just impressed. Bryke have somehow managed to make a show in which a brown muscle waifu who is the reincarnated elemental bending Jesus of faux 1920s Hong Kong, who in one scene fights the literal personification of darkness, the most boring fucking shit imaginable. Part 2. What the fuck is going on? Again. Harry S. Plinkett once described Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones as if someone dumped out 5 separate jigsaw puzzles into a pile on the floor and mixed them all up, which I think is at least somewhat applicable to Spirits. Subplots begin and go nowhere, characters are introduced and then jettisoned into inexistence, and nothing seems to make any fucking sense at all.
Looks like you had some car trouble. Good thing the police are here.
Oh, my side!
The first half of the season focuses on this really poorly developed civil war plot between the southern and northern water tribes, led by Korra's uncle, Unalaq, who is oh so conveniently the chief of the north.
The great chief of the Northern Water Tribe comes to grace us with his presence. Hooray.
Just relax, Tonrock. He'll be gone soon enough.
Against Korra's father, Tonrock, who has some position of importance in the south. I mean, what's the chance of that? That the one person in the world capable of controlling all 4 elements just happens to be related by blood to 2 key figures of this season?
Brother.
Unalaq, who surprisingly ends up being the central antagonist of the season, big shocker on that one.
What a twist!
Has Korra open a literal portal to the spirit world in the Southern Water Tribe.
So once we get to the South Pole, then what happens?
You will open an ancient spirit portal.
I'm sorry, what now?
Remember how in the Siege of the North, the finale of Book 1 of Avatar, Aang has to enter the spirit world to get wisdom from the spirits in defeating the Fire Nation. But the thing is, he can't just enter the spirit world on a whim, even though he's the Avatar and a monk. So Yue takes him to
the most spiritual place in the entire North Pole.
There, Aang has to meditate in complete silence and finally enters the spirit world after becoming entranced by the moon and water spirits.
Is he okay? He's crossing into the spirit world. He'll be fine as long as we don't move his body.
This takes about half an episode. Now, compare that to Korra. Never seen that before. Yeah, I know Avatar did this as well, but it did it before it was cool. Now it's just lame. The spirit world, a mystical and mysterious place that Aang had substantial difficulty in entering, despite his spiritual wisdom.
It takes all his concentration. Is there any way we can help?
How about some quiet? Come on, guys, I can hear every word you're saying.
Is replaced with a literal portal that anyone can enter into.
So is this the way to the spirit world?
No, you'll have to get there on your own.
What is played as a joke in Avatar is completely serious in Korra.
Let's go.
I mean, what's the point in spirituality or wisdom or any of this when you can literally just walk into the spirit world? Where's the mysticism in that? Plus, there's an entire episode in Book 2 dedicated to Tenzin's failure to enter the spirit world through meditation and his sense of disappointment towards Aang.
Actually, I've never been into the spirit world.
Awesome. Anyway, after opening the southern portal, Unalaq still has other plans.
There is another portal in the north. Once you open it, spirits and man will be able to move freely between the north and the south in a matter of seconds.
With both portals open, our tribes will be united again.
The world will be united again.
Excuse me, what the fuck does that mean?
Once you open it, spirits and man will be able to move freely between the north and the south in a matter of seconds.
So not only is this a portal into the spirit world, but a portal to the other side of the globe? Does that mean that spirits and humans will be able to travel freely between the north and the south? Or the spirit world and our world? Or both? Does the spirit world have a north and a south? How do you know this information if you haven't been inside these portals? In fact, as it's revealed later, these portals have been closed for 10,000 years. Did some document that explained this from that long ago survive? Is this common knowledge? And if so, why was this never mentioned in Avatar? You know, considering that traveling from the south to the North Pole is the entire plot of the first season.
Roku, the water tribe is under attack. I need to find the ocean and the moon spirits.
Hey Aang, did I ever tell you about how there's a giant magical spirit portal to the other side of the globe? Like right next to the southern water tribe and also the northern water tribe? It's like right next to the oasis, man. You could open them with ease. You know, you're the Avatar. I could take you to them in 5 minutes. We're already in the spirit world. You know you can open them from inside the spirit world? Isn't that kind of crazy? Because your body isn't even here. I guess your spirit can open portals because you're the avatar, and the avatar is possessed by a giant kite called Rava, which I'm sure you're very aware of. It's common knowledge. You know, you could basically just teleport to and from the southern and northern water tribe. Actually, you probably could have skipped, I don't even know, 18 episodes of the show. You could have just opened it instantly. They would have no idea where you were. They'd be like, where the fuck did he go? It'd be pretty convenient, I imagine. You know, just if you wanted to know, man. You know, a similar thing to this scenario happened in Avatar, actually. The warring Admiral Zhao, in an attempt to find a weakness in the Northern Water Tribe, discovers the physical forms of the moon and water spirits. Oh, well, that's a bit convenient, isn't it? How did he find that?
I discovered a hidden library, underground, in fact. I tore through scroll after scroll. One of them contained a detailed illustration and the words moon and ocean. I knew then that these spirits could be found and killed.
Oh. So what, you just have a Deus Ex Machina library that just randomly exists for this express purpose?
Wan Shitong and his knowledge seekers collected books from all over the world and put them on display for mankind to read so that we might better ourselves.
Are you the spirit who brought this library to the physical world?
Indeed. I am Wan Shitong, he who knows 10,000 things.
The gang visit this library in Season 2, giving them vital information about an upcoming solar eclipse that will allow them to invade the Fire Nation, shaping the next 30 episodes of the show.
That's it! The solar eclipse! It's just a few months away. Got it! Now let's get to Bossing Say.
Oh. Okay, then. I love the fact that Korra just completely ignores Unalaq's point about the spirits moving freely between the worlds when this was a completely new revelation at this point. Like, the only thing she's concerned about is that the tribes are going to be united.
With both portals open, our tribes will be united again.
And not the giant fucking laser beam in the sky, or her evidently extremely evil uncle. Like, this character is so evil that he literally just sits alone in the dark in his ice palace in his spare time.
Sorry to interrupt.
The issue here is that not only is nothing explained, but that Unalaq is an unreliable character to be getting information from because he's intentionally deceiving Korra for his own purposes.
If you can open the portal in time, balance will be restored.
But at the same time, we as an audience never actually know what's going on. So you have this awkward tension where you're not sure if any of the information you're hearing is correct.
Once you open it, spirits and man will be able to move freely between the north and the south in a matter of seconds.
But the solstice is over. How am I going to open it?
The spiritual energy is much stronger in the north. And why would I do that?
Because you still need me to open the northern portal.
No, I don't. You've served your purpose. I need you two to go after the Avatar. She's the only one who can open the northern spirit portal.
But Father, you told Korra...
I told Korra what I thought she needed to hear. Good. Because I'll need your help to open the northern portal.
I thought only the Avatar could do it.
I believe there is another way.
Father, haven't the spirits had 10,000 years to open this portal?
If they could not succeed, what makes you think we will?
By entering the spirit world through the portal, we bring with us something the spirits never had. Our bending.
Wait, what?
Join me. Together we can open this portal.
Excuse me? What? So your alternative method was just to shoot water at this thing. Why did you think this would work? You even have a waterbending technique that is specifically designed to control spirits, and you don't even try that? And this isn't even the craziest part. Unalaq is meant to be the wise spiritual leader of this season.
There are no evil spirits. There is light and dark in them all. But when they're unbalanced, the darkness takes over.
He has the only bending method capable of subduing dark spirits, which he also learned from somewhere, and his entire philosophy, whatever that is, seems to revolve around the harmony of spirits and man.
But I am saddened to see what it has become. A cheap carnival that celebrates greedy and trivial humans. I fear the time is fast approaching when the North can no longer stand idly by while our southern brothers slip into total spiritual decay.
He's constantly talking about the separation of humanity from traditional living and spirituality.
It's a shame the southerners have abandoned all connections to the spirits, even during the most hallowed times.
Which actually makes for an interesting character in theory, until you get to this shit. I think the greatest irony of this is that this is also Korra's first reaction to trying to open the portal.
Why isn't it opening?
But her character is meant to be spiritually retarded, which is why she tries to solve it with her bending.
Come on, portal, open!
This isn't supposed to be the right way of doing this. When creating characters, one of the primary methods of differentiation between them is something called tactics, which is pretty much what it sounds like. If one character thinks and feels a certain way, then of course they're going to tackle problems in a different way.
Maybe there's another way. What if I came at the boulder from a different angle?
No, that's the problem. You've got to stop thinking like an airbender. There's no different angle, no clever solution, no trickety trick that's gonna move that rock. You've got to face it head on. And when I say head on, I mean like this.
You can't just have two characters who are binary opposites use the same tactics to solve a situation like this. It makes no sense at all. This is basically indicative of the level of spirituality and mysticism displayed in this season. Ambiguity.
The only thing I can't figure out is how you made the tornado that sucked us down.
I can't do anything like that. I just bend the water into plants.
Interesting symbolism and visuals mixed with real-life Buddhist or Hindu teachings are replaced with giant laser beams and neon-colored Pokemon.
What is that?
Anyway, I've avoided talking about this till now, but I should probably mention the major screwball in this season. So at the end of episode 6, after the Civil War plot just kind of goes away, Korra is attacked by a dark spirit and washes up on a Fire Nation beach with amnesia. There, she's discovered by some fire sages who claim she's been affected by the spirit that attacked her.
A dark energy has infected her. We must purge it before it destroys her avatar spirit.
From here, we enter a 2-episode flashback set 10,000 years in the past, to the time of the first Avatar, One.
No, but I can help you find her. My name is One, and I will show you how I became the first Avatar.
Now, I just want to mention that these 2 episodes come at the literal middle point of this season and have no direct relation to the plot, setting, or characters of Korra. Sure, they have narrative implications later in the story, but the point is that your season pacing is probably a little bit fucked if you can have a 2-episode detour like this in the middle of your 14-episode season.
Yeah, so there was like an origin story to the whole Avatar, to the Avatar, that Mike and I had kicked around since, man, probably season 2 of Avatar. And it was something that we thought, oh, it'd be cool to do. You know, we thought in different ways we might be able to get to this story. And one day Mike just came into my office, he and the writers had been talking, he's like, man, we think we found a way to weave this in that is just completely organic to the story we're telling. And so we all got really excited.
Yeah, real organic. Right in the middle. Out of nowhere. Now, I'm not going to go into these episodes too deeply because another YouTuber by the name of E:R has already done exactly that, and there's basically nothing I could add to what he has to say. Anyway, these episodes get some serious praise, and not without some merit. The animation is pretty fantastic, the storytelling is on a completely different level to the rest of this season, and by far they're the best episodes of Book 2.
Even with Vaatu locked away, darkness still surrounds humanity. There wasn't enough time.
In saying that, I'm comparing shit with other shit. While these episodes are narratologically and technically okay, as in they function as stories, they completely and utterly ruin the mythos of Avatar. To put it bluntly, the Avatar is not some vague mystical being that came into existence from unknown natural forces, but is in fact a reincarnating being possessed by the literal spirit of light.
My name is Rava. That spirit you freed is Vaatu. He is the force of darkness and chaos. I am the force of light and peace. Since the beginning of time, we have battled over the fate of this world.
Essentially, through a series of circumstances, one, who is basically just a random person with firebending, ends up accidentally freeing Vaatu, the spirit of darkness, from his eternal fight with Rava.
Thank you, human. You have performed a great service for the spirits.
I mean, just look at this shit. What the fuck am I watching? Why the fuck do these guys look like glowing DMT kites? Or the Naru from WoW? As far as I'm aware, there's no kind of religious imagery that this design is drawing from, besides the names meaning something in Sanskrit. I mean, you don't want to just steal imagery. Well, except from Miyazaki. But it's just baffling as to why this would be your go-to choice. I mean, the most obvious comparison is the yin-yang spirits of moon and water in Avatar, personified by koi fish, which take after the zodiac sign for Pisces. Nothing super complex, but there's obviously a basis in real-life mythology there. With this, I mean, I don't know what the fuck they were going for. It's obvious that this is also meant to be a reflection of yin and yang, which even then is completely misguided to the point of being outright incorrect, and is something I'll be delving into later. But just, why?
What's this harmonic thing Vaatu was talking about?
Harmonic convergence. That is when Vaatu and I must battle for the fate of the world.
Are you ready for our final battle, Rava?
I have to leave you. If I stay any longer, you will die. We are bonded forever.
You know, there's a difference between things being mystical or spiritual and just being complete nonsense. This makes no fucking sense. Why does this place exist in the first place? And why do portals from the North and South Pole have a literal meeting place in the spirit world? Why do the spirit portals touch each other when harmonic convergence starts if harmonic convergence is merely Vaatu and Rava fighting?
Harmonic convergence. That is when Vaatu and I must battle for the fate of the world.
Why do the portals glow gold, and why does one glow blue after touching it? He can't fuse with Rava for more than a couple of minutes because she's too powerful for him, but after touching the portal, he can? Why is there a tree in the middle of this place that doubles as a prison for one of the spirits? Is that its intended purpose? Did Vaatu and Rava create this, or did it always exist? Is it designed as a prison, or did one just decide to place Vaatu in there on a whim?
And I will close the portal so no human will ever be able to physically enter the spirit world and release you.
But 2 episodes later, Unalaq enters the spirit world through the southern portal and can't free Vaatu. But somehow Korra, who enters the spirit world through meditation, can still open one of the spirit portals, even though her physical form isn't there. I'm usually not too big of a fan of this style of criticism that people like YMS tend to form into, where they end up being quite incredulous over what end up being, I think, relatively minor plot holes in films and television. But in this case, this really doesn't make any sense. This isn't mysterious or mystical or anything, though it certainly uses those labels to disguise itself as such. It's just nonsense. People touching laser beams and glowing and shooting more laser beams. I have no concept of what they're achieving or really what the stakes are in this battle. Sure, if Rava and One lose, Spirit Satan will roam the earth for 10,000 years. But when One's battling Vaatu, there's a moment when he's hit by one of his purple dubstep beams. And One just seems to be fine. I was under the assumption that this would just vaporize him instantly if it touched him, but he doesn't even look wounded. I suppose it could be the fact that Rava is inside him and that gives his physical body a higher resilience to damage, but I don't see any visual cues for this. If I'm getting to this stage of analysis and confusion over someone shooting a laser beam at someone else, then there's probably something severely wrong with your storytelling capabilities. Anyway, like I said, I don't want to get into these episodes, or even this season, too deeply on a pedantic plot hole level, because we'd literally be here all day. This whole season feels like an Aristophanes play, an absurd parody of what a real Avatar season would contain, or perhaps more accurately, an ironic and oblivious version of the Ember Island players, except with us being trapped in the audience.
Lu and Gong are idiots. I hate them and their stupid mustaches.
And this isn't even getting into some of the more bizarro subplots of Spirits, one of which involves Bolin becoming a film star.
Anyway, wish I could stand around here and chit-chat, but I gotta go shoot my big scene.
And another that has Tenzin on vacation with his brother and sister, where they discuss how Aang treated them as children.
I wish I could be as good a father as Dad was to us.
Tenzin, your problem is you're exactly like Dad. He was so focused on saving the world and doing his duty, don't laugh, that he never had time for us.
Dad was under a lot of pressure.
He always had time for you, though. His precious little airbender.
Dad loved us all equally. Besides, it all happened a long time ago. Why are we even talking about this?
Because you seem to have some grandiose delusion that we had a perfect, happy-go-lucky childhood. Guess what? We didn't.
This subplot is so useless that Tenzin, a main character, has literally not heard of the Civil War plot until Korra tells him 9 episodes into this season.
Wait, you don't know about the Civil War?
What? No. We've been out of touch with the outside world since we started our vacation.
None of the characters change in this subplot with Tenzin, and it doesn't affect the plot at all. And I don't mean at all in a vague sense. Literally, there's not one single thing that this contributes.
Maybe we should forget about all this training discipline for now. Why don't you and Pokey just have fun and play?
Thanks, Dad.
Training makes me tired.
I mean, the Bolin film star plot is absurd, but at least it has a purpose and comes into play later in the narrative. In fact, surprisingly, it's probably the best part of this season next to the 1 episodes, which leads me to my next point. Part 3. The good stuff. I'm not one for pure negativity, and the truth is that not everything in Spirits is awful. Just the vast, vast majority. See, most of this analysis isn't just going to be nitpicking. I don't really see the purpose in pointing out flaws that anyone who's half conscious can see when they watch the show. In fact, the best way to understand why this season is so bad is just to watch it yourself. That's it. I challenge you to watch any episode from Spirits, excluding the 1 episodes, and then watch any episode of Avatar and see the difference. That's the simplest way to see why one is so much better than the other. Honestly, I think some people have just forgotten how good Avatar is, especially when compared to Korra. It's almost like it's desensitized people to bad writing and storytelling. Anyway, what I'm concerned with is the stuff that's bad on some kind of transcendent level, not basic bitch shit like continuity errors or plot holes. Yes, these issues obviously do play a part in the season being awful, but they're not what places it in the 9th circle of hell. The irony though, is that because Spirits is so bad, I have to nitpick this season to find things that are good about it, though they certainly are there. I like the character of Varric, like, a lot. Like with Darth Sidious in the prequels. Do it! He's one of the only characters in the whole show that seems to have any passion at all.
Chief Unalaq is here to help the South. He wants to show us how to restore balance with the spirits so they'll stop attacking.
The only spirit I'm interested in restoring is our spirit of independence! Am I right, people? Yes.
The voice actor is great and apparently got to ad-lib a ton of lines, which is very surprising for an animated show. And there's a great twist involving his character that, while not surprising in the slightest, definitely elevates him above what he should have been, especially when compared to everyone else in this season. He actually feels like someone who could have been in the original series, which is by far the highest compliment I can give anyone in Korra. He actually has a motivation, some depth, and autonomy.
Look, we all know where this conflict is heading. We need to start preparing for war.
Despite ostensibly being a comedic side character with little screen time. I mean, while the rest of the cast are fucking around and Tenzin is quite literally on vacation, Varric starts an uprising in like a day.
If Unalaq doesn't pull his forces out, then we have no choice but to fight for our freedom!
Escapes from Unalaq and fuels both sides of a civil war for his own benefit, backstabs Asami by hiring gang members to steal all of her military supplies, and then uses her bankruptcy to partner with her company.
So what were you saying, Mako? You think you know who hired the triple threats?
Yeah, and I'm real close to proving it.
Later, he produces propaganda films and uses the screening of one in an attempt to assassinate the president. Fucking baller. It just goes to show that if you know what you're doing, you can establish character very quickly, and it's unsurprising that he's a fan favorite. But not only is his character well written, it seems as if only his scenes have any semblance of thought put into them at all. As I mentioned before, I'm not too concerned with going into all of the technical issues with this season, mainly because there's so fucking many of them, but for the most part, the lighting and cinematography are really flat. So you typically end up with these characters seemingly being projected against disgusting tie-dye style backgrounds or boring interiors. But it seems like the muses of good television descended from wherever to bless Varric's scenes.
Go ahead. Torture me all you want. I'm not gonna talk.
Torture? The only thing I want to torture is this pesky foot fungus. Ooh! Ah! Eee! Ooh! Oh, the burning means it's working. I'm saying I want your help to protect them. Without you, who knows what could happen?
There's a cool little thing going on here with the fire pit, creating that signature bad guy low-angle lighting, but also using the fire pit as a joke for Varric, showing both his manipulative masterminding side and his disarming comedic side.
I heard you've been investigating the recent attacks on my ships. And I think you know that I know that you know. You know?
Know what?
That the world is a dangerous place!
Like, this is nothing super crazy or anything, but for once in this season, it seems as if someone sat down and thought of a cool way to visually explore his character. He lifts just about every scene he's in, and the subplot he's responsible for has Bolin becoming an actor for propaganda films in the newly invented film medium.
You're gonna love this! Mind-blowing, right?
Yeah.
This sounds really dumb, and it kind of is, but it's unironically the best part of this season.
The Southern Water Tribe is mine. Next, I will conquer the world with my water-bending doomsday device!
Just if you're wondering, a subplot involving a main character becoming a film star should never ever ever have been a subplot in Avatar. Ever. I actually like his voice actor, PJ Byrne. He's pretty good in The Wolf of Wall Street for the little role he has there.
I say we stick with the loophole, right? Okay? If we don't consider him a human, we just consider it an act, I think we're in the clear. Like the Flying Walendas, you know, a lot of those guys died, but they never sued anybody.
Yet again, these seem to be the only scenes in the whole season with any sense of comedic timing or cleverness to them.
Have a seat. I'm just working on a cure for the common cold. No longer will my citizens suffer from the sniffles.
Mr. President, there's something more important than the sniffles right now.
The Flash Gordon parody stuff is pretty great and weirdly self-aware considering how bad the rest of the series is. Unalaq is portrayed as the ridiculously evil, mustache-twirling villain here.
You're too late, Nuktuk. Soon my doomsday device will shoot this block of ice into the Earth's core, freezing the entire planet.
But that's actually how his character is in the show.
Now, 10,000 years of darkness begins.
Like, the Ember Island Players episode mainly lampooned the main cast of Avatar through a process of Flanderization.
Every day, the world awaits a beacon to guide us, yet none appears. Still, we cannot give up hope, for hope is all we have, and we must never relinquish it, even to our dying breath.
Well, that's just silly. I don't sound like that.
But here, the flaws they're pointing out with Unalaq are legitimate issues in the show. Like, if they were aware of how bad and simplistic his character was, why didn't they change him? I guess that criticism is also applicable to Avatar though, because they have a very similar depiction with the Fire Lord.
The world is mine.
Who is actually pretty similar to how he's portrayed in the series finale.
You are right. I do have the power. I have all the power in the world!
I'll talk about the beginnings episodes later, which are definitely a high point for the season, but that isn't really saying much. Yeah, that's about it. Part 4. Setting the stage for banality. One of the most enjoyable aspects of Avatar was its variety in setting. Like with any good action-adventure series, there was always a fantastic sense of place and lore within the world. Each environment felt unique, and in fact was unique, with the cinematography in particular helping to accentuate the ideas of a location. For example, the desert in the appropriately titled Avatar episode of the same name is framed as this isolating sea which engulfs these tiny characters. Why? Because the episode is about hopelessness. Appa has been kidnapped by sandbenders, Toph can't see anything for real this time, Sokka's tripping balls, and Aang is, well, on On the most basic thematic level, these characters are insignificant in comparison to the overwhelming problems facing them. You can tell this because they're small and in the corner of the frame, while the desert is big. With spirits, it really feels like I'm watching the prequels. Bland characters standing and talking in front of these sterile, projected backgrounds.
We take great pride in our combat education and training programs. This group was created about 5 years ago.
Hopefully you can see what I mean by this. The settings that Spirits places itself in are so dull and boring that the gang could literally be anywhere and it wouldn't make a difference. Now, all of this may not seem like a big deal at all, especially when compared to the other glaring issues in the season. I mean, hey, it's just background, right? Before seeing this season, I may have agreed, but it's really opened my eyes in regards to simply how important setting is in storytelling. For fantasy and science fiction shows in particular, in which the world is drastically different from our own, it's very important to keep up the sense of these characters existing in a real world. For something set in the modern day, it's easy to do this because, well, they don't need to do anything. We get how the society functions because we live in it, or we have historical knowledge of it. But the point of science fiction and fantasy is that they're markedly different from our own. We want to feel immersed in their differences and their idiosyncrasies, and understand how they affect the characters that live in them. The first season of Korra solely takes place in Republic City, a location that is essentially not explored, but I'll get back to that later. The second season still takes place in Republic City, but at least diversifies this a little bit, with the first half taking place in the Southern Water Tribe, and there being several forays into the spirit world. Of course, I think these forays are shit, but at least they're something. So in book 1, you have 1 location for 12 episodes, and in book 2, you have 3 locations for 14 episodes. But here's something pretty crazy. Every single episode of Avatar takes place in a new location. This is something that took me a while to realize because I'm not sure if it's actually common knowledge. I'll specify that 2-parters usually take place in the same location, and that if we return to a location, it's so drastically different to how we first saw it that it may as well be a new one. Don't believe me? Well, fuck you. The Southern Water Tribe, the Southern Air Temple, Kyoshi Island, Omashu, an Earth Village and later a Metal Fire Nation prison, an Earth Kingdom forest, a different Earth Kingdom forest. This one has a river, the Freedom Fighters' treetop hideout, the Great Divide, a seaside village, but more importantly Aang and Zuko's backstories, a Fire Nation military base, another Earth Kingdom town, this one has a volcano, a Perfume Monastery, Zhongzhong's River Hideout, the Northern Air Temple, and the last 3 episodes of the season take place in the North Pole. But even this isn't static. The second last episode reveals to us 2 new locations, the Spirit Oasis and the Spirit World. Not only do we experience an enormous part of the world of Avatar in the first season, a lot of the conflicts and drama utilize setting to their advantage. For example, in The Fortune Teller, Aang's opponent is an erupting volcano, a part of the setting. In Jet, natural water reserves and a village existing in a valley are used as part of Jet's plan. And in the season finale, Zhao's attack on the Spirit Oasis and the moon and water spirits contained inside are the basis of the finale's climax. And here's the rest. Double time. An Earth Kingdom military base, the Cave of Two Lovers, Omashu, but this time it's occupied by the Fire Nation, a swamp, an Earth Kingdom town that hates the Avatar, the Beifong Estate, a desert town but more importantly Zuko's childhood, an Earth Kingdom forest and abandoned town, a gorge, Wanji Tong's library, the Siwong Desert, the Serpent's Pass, and Ba Sing Se. Third season, a Fire Nation boat, a Fire Nation school, a Fire Nation village on the water, Pian Dao's estate, the Ember Island beach, Roku's past, an industrial Fire Nation town, Hama's house, Aang's nightmares, the Fire Nation capital, the Western Air Temple, the Sun Warrior civilization, the Boiling Rock, a Fire Nation island, and more importantly, Katara's past. The Ember Island player's rendition of The Boy in the Iceberg, and the last 4 episodes of the series take place in a variety of locations like Ember Island, Ba Sing Se, the back of a lion turtle, and ultimately definitely an enormous pile of rocks somewhere in the Earth Kingdom. So, every episode or two-parter takes place in a different location, except in the case of Ba Sing Se, the best example of them all. In episode 33 of Avatar, The Drill, we arrive at the outer wall of Ba Sing Se, but it's only in episode 34, City of Walls and Secrets, that we actually enter the city. We spend 7 episodes here, 8 if you include the brief scene at the end of Appa's Lost Days, and in this time we gain a very comprehensive image of this city. Unlike Republic City, which is only seen in the most superficial light with a sparse couple of disparate locations, Ba Sing Se is constantly explored. In fact, every single episode we spend here takes place in a radically different location within the city, which in itself could be considered to abide by the new location for every episode idea. The Drill shows off the enormous walls surrounding the city, incorporating this setting into the plot of a giant drill attempting to break through. City of Walls and Secrets begins with an exploration of the lower, middle, and upper rings of Ba Sing Se, introducing us to locations and characters that will appear in later episodes. It's the expositional episode that sets up the rest of this arc.
What's most important to His Royal Majesty is maintaining the cultural heritage of Ba Sing Se. All his duties relate to issuing decrees on such matters. It's my job to oversee the rest of the city's resources, including the military.
Episode 35, Tales of Ba Sing Se, exists to flesh out the city, with 6 separate vignettes of characters exploring a variety of different locations. We get a very strong sense here of the regular, everyday people of Ba Sing Se. The city is humanized for us, and we begin to feel that this is a real and functioning place.
If this is for a romantic picnic, may I suggest this lavender one?
No, it's not a romantic picnic, but it is a special occasion.
Something I've noticed in at least the first 2 seasons of Korra is the empty streets. Everything feels so dead and cold and lifeless, but I don't think this was their intention. It's nothing like the very real feeling social rings of Ba Sing Se or the colorful characters that come with them. In episode 37, Lake Laogai, we explore Lake Laogai, surprisingly, a very different location to the rest of the city, and a wonderfully fucking creepy place.
I'm Judy. Welcome to Ba Sing Se.
Here, we expand upon the already established Orwellian and authoritarian nature of the city with a very strong aesthetic sensibility. And I think aesthetic is the main thing here. Setting is used to make us feel and understand the themes of a given arc or character.
I'm coming for you, buddy. He's here. I can feel it.
The Ba Sing Se arc is fundamentally about the head of a shadow government who uses his secret police force to ensure any discussion of the 100-Year War is silenced.
There's no war in Ba Sing Se.
What are you talking about? Where do you think all the refugees come from? You can't hide it.
It's a dark and mysterious arc, with Longfeng utilizing subterfuge, manipulation, and political red tape as his main offensive tools. As such, Ba Sing Se is depicted as a labyrinthine nightmare. Because Aang's immediate desire is to find Appa, Ba Sing Se becomes another opponent.
He's a giant bison. Where could someone possibly hide him?
This is how important setting is to Avatar, and why the first 2 seasons of Korra feel as dull, emotionless, and stale as they are.
Lu and Gong are idiots. I hate them and their stupid mustaches.
Very rarely is the setting projected onto a character as the characters are projected onto the setting. Anyway, episode 38, the Earth King, has a fantastic scene showing off the Earth King's palace. Episode 39, the Guru, largely takes place outside of Ba Sing Se in another beautiful location that is very strongly used to explore Aang's character. And episode 40, the Crossroads of Destiny, shows off the crystal catacombs underneath the city. The settings here are a little less important than the previous episodes, but the point is that by the end of the arc, we have a very good sense of the city as a personality.
Right. And which of your professors could we ask about the war with the Fire Nation? I don't know. I'm not a political science student. I have to get to class.
I think that's the real feeling that world building should give, the sensation that these places stretch far beyond what we see of them and exist as their own perpetually turning machines, like we're being exposed to the cogs of a watch. Now, why am I spending so much time talking about this? Because Korra feels isolated and dead, like it exists in some kind of limbo. There's a scene in episode 10 where Korra enters the spirit world with Jinora, becomes lost, and eventually finds the Force Ghost of Iroh and has an Alice in Wonderland style tea party. Now, regardless of this weirdly shoehorned meeting with Iroh, I'd like to draw attention to this shot in particular. Hopefully you can see where I'm going with this, i.e. the tea party location and the over-designed mountain in the background are the only places that we visit in this episode. Everything outside this is just a blank wasteland apparently inhabited by no one. Nothing in this world seems to exist outside of this shot. Earlier in the episode, we have this sequence involving meerkats and some kind of water vortex, and then Korra is underwater and there's this crocodile thing, and it's all just very confusing and random, as opposed to an actual living, functioning world.
I'm sorry to disturb you, I just really need to find the moon and the ocean spirits.
Go away.
This stuff is completely surreal and feels more like a dream sequence than anything, even though the spirit world is meant to be a functioning, albeit unconventional place. But then you get to this shot and all that random imagery is just stripped back. There's just nothing there but what we see, and there's certainly no sense of a world existing outside of the frame. It feels more like an image of a watch rather than the cogs of one. There's an idea of something going on, but there's no depth or logic to it. And here's the problem with that. As mentioned prior, the spirit world can now be accessed physically as well as through meditation. If you enter physically, bending works, and I suppose your human form can die, but if you enter through meditation, then bending is gone, and it's just your spirit. The issue is that the line is blurred between this being a real, tangible location and an LSD dream trip in which one's emotional state can alter the landscape.
I don't like the spirit world! I don't want to be here anymore!
You can't really have both because nothing ends up making any sense.
So it was really fun to play with the inconsistent, ever-changing spatial relationships in the spirit world. You see it throughout this season. Yeah, so, you know, when little Korra goes to climb that mountain, all of a sudden she'll turn around and Iroh's, you know, half a mile behind her, or she's suddenly halfway up the mountain. You know, it was really fun to play with that. Like, nothing is really, there's no constant in the
yeah, there's insane
spirit world.
Sort of psychological trickery.
The geography of the spirit world being dreamy and nonsensical would be okay, but then there are scenes later where Tenzin walks from location to location.
I've seen that same spirit mushroom 5 times.
That's not the same mushroom.
Yes, I am.
See, even it knows we're lost.
The Tree of Time and the 2 portals are here, and Korra is able to fly to this, but later Tenzin just runs to this location.
This light spirit will guide you out of the spirit world.
They're over here!
Even though it's surrounded by mountains. So this is a place that people can literally enter into, but the sense you get from this sequence is that it's basically just some weird internal dream projection. I suppose it's possible that you could do both, but the rules of this place are so poorly established that it completely ruins anything interesting that could have gone on here.
We also, I remember going for hours with you, Ian, discussing what side the portals were on, where they were in orientation to the tree. It turns out the tree was facing sort of neutral to both portals, but for the longest time we were continually making revisions, I remember, to the board. And you were like, this tree's making me crazy!
Well, it's because the spatial relationships in this world can bend.
Yeah.
It makes it even a little harder to track.
Or it gives us a bit of an excuse when we're inconsistent.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Part 5. Mature issues. A common defense of Korra is that the show isn't about Korra getting stronger physically via power crawl. It's about her maturing mentally, spiritually, and philosophically. Instead of focusing on characters or plot, or interesting action, or being an entertaining piece of media in general, it deals with lofty themes of ideology, spirituality, philosophy, and so on and so forth. I forget where I found this comment, but it really hits the nail on the head in regards to that perspective. I like how every time someone defends Locke, they gotta over-intellectualize it like it's some high art masterpiece. Yeah, great. You can reference larger overall themes and philosophical concepts. I'd care more if the plot weren't borderline retarded and it didn't take a steamer on the original lore. All of those brilliant themes ring hollow when the show lacks basic coherence. Avatar and Korra are about power crawl in the same way they're about world building, action, characters, themes, and so on. Just because Korra happens to deal with certain themes and ideas and is thus about these, it does not mean that it magically shirks dealing with power crawl. You can argue that one is more important than the other, sure, but the assumption here is that they're mutually exclusive elements, that they cannot exist simultaneously, and this couldn't be more wrong. Let's do a little test. What makes Zuko a character? Seriously, is it his written dialogue, or his voice, or his design, or the lines and colors that form this design? Or is it simply the idea of Zuko? See, you can't simply separate something as complex and nuanced as character into these neat demarcated categories. The idea that Korra is only about her struggle against ideology and has absolutely nothing to do with the physical manifestation of this in the form of fighting is as ludicrous as claiming that Zuko is a character solely because he is a collection of lines on a page. Character, plot, action, world building, power crawl, and philosophical growth, among other things, exist simultaneously and symbiotically in Korra. It's incorrect to say that power crawl, something inherent to this style of show, can be ignored simply because the show has themes. Think of story as being like the human body. Themes and ideas are like the brain, expressing the higher design and purpose of the story, but these designs cannot be expressed without a body. The body exists in the form of anything that we can see and hear on the screen: characters, plot, setting, action, and so on. Ergo, if a body is weak, it may not be able to express its ideas to the utmost. I've mentioned before that I really like the idea of Amon and inequality in the Avatar world, but the problem is that these themes are ruined by the body of Korra. Because the writing is so poor, and the plot so rushed and the characters so flat, it's impossible to meaningfully examine the complexities of something like ideology. As John Truby says, good writers express their moral vision, or theme, slowly and subtly, primarily through the story structure and the way the hero deals with a particular situation. Your moral vision is communicated by how the hero pursues his goal while competing with one or more opponents, and by what your hero learns or fails to learn over the course of the struggle. Structure is how theme is conveyed in a story, which is why Power Crawl is so integral to Korra's growth. Power Crawl forces Korra to physically confront obstacles and grow, or not grow, as a result. It's one of the clearest visual manifestations of a character's growth, which is why it's a staple of shonen anime. It's easy to understand, is structural and formulaic, and doesn't require a lot of nuance. When Goku goes Super Saiyan for the first time, it's more than a mere power-up. He becomes a stronger and more determined individual. Why? Because he is emotionally changed by the death of his friends and his hatred for Frieza. By seeing Goku grow physically, we understand that he has in fact grown on multiple levels. It's like a litmus test for the soul. Themes like egalitarianism or theocracy are the same in that they cannot exist in a vacuum. They must be expressed through the body of the medium for us to actually experience them, and Power Crawl is one of the ways this expression can occur. Of course, it's not the only way of expressing this, but when the first season of your show ends like this... No! And the second season ends like this... you're obviously missing out on a massive opportunity for thematic exploration. No! This is not dealing with inequality or egalitarianism. Korra never actually forms a cohesive opinion about these themes, she never discusses them with Amon or anyone else in any depth, and she never acts like she's been altered by them at all.
I have mastered airbending. Punch, punch, punch!
Amon could have had any philosophical or religious or social belief, and it wouldn't have mattered. She'd beat him up and gain airbending in the same way. This goes for Unalaq as well. I won't spoil anything here or go into this too much because I talk about it later, but there's a fantastic scene in Book 3 where Korra sits down with the main antagonist of the season and just talks to him. He expresses his views on the world, and we clearly see how Korra responds to them. It's much harder to show why Book 1 and 2 fail with even simple stuff like this, because they simply don't contain scenes like this. There's nothing I can show you, because there's nothing there. A good test to see the difference between these is this. What is Korra's perspective on egalitarianism or theocracy, and what scenes are these explored in? You would assume that not being able to answer this question would mean the show doesn't really explore these themes, and you're goddamn right. Anyway, the point is that you actually cannot explore themes if your characters aren't allowed to confront them, and nothing else in the body of your story expresses them. So what ends up happening is that inequality or egalitarianism or theocracy just become these vague ideas that are raised.
And that's why the evil spirits are attacking?
There are no evil spirits. There is light and dark in them all. But when they're unbalanced, the darkness takes over.
But everything in the series actually works against their being explored. So yes, Korra is about mature issues, it just happens that it handles them in almost the worst way you possibly could. Congratulations.